In a world overflowing with distractions, one truth remains hidden in plain sight, the essence of who you truly are. Beneath the noise of your thoughts, under the mask of your roles, behind the armor you've built to survive, lies your original self. And yet, most people never meet that self. Why? Because modern life has trained us to forget. We've been conditioned to look outward, to seek validation, identity, success, peace, all from the external world. But there is a forbidden technique, ancient, powerful, and rarely practiced, that reverses this conditioning. It does not come from books, it cannot be taught by force, it is not about belief, but experience. This technique is stillness in motion, a way to turn the senses inward, to observe without judging, to act without craving, and to become deeply present with your breath, body, and being. The Shaolin masters have practiced it for centuries. Mystics and sages across time have hinted at it, and those who embrace it, they awaken, they remember. You do not find your true self by adding more. You remember it by removing what you are not. That is the path. That is the practice. That is the forbidden technique, the one that society distracts you from, the one that schools ignore, and the one that will bring you face to face with the most powerful truth. From the moment you're born, you are bombarded with messages about who you're supposed to be. Before you even have a chance to ask, who am I really, society begins to answer that question for you with labels, expectations, and conditioning. As a child, you're praised for following rules, not for questioning them. You're rewarded for memorizing, not for understanding. You're told what success looks like, what failure feels like, and what kind of dreams are realistic. Slowly but surely, a framework is built around you, a framework that doesn't honor your uniqueness, but rather molds you into something more predictable, more acceptable, more normal. This is not accidental. It is systemic. The education system teaches you to remember facts, not yourself. It prepares you to become a worker, not a thinker. You're trained to be efficient, not awakened. You're handed a predefined identity, student, achiever, follower. And every deviation from this path is treated as rebellion or dysfunction, when in truth, it may be your soul's attempt to wake you up. Then comes adulthood, where the world intensifies its grip. You chase careers, approval, wealth, and image. You measure your worth through productivity. Social media becomes your mirror, reflecting not your true self, but your carefully edited persona. Likes become a form of love. Validation becomes a form of oxygen. And beneath all of this, your inner voice, the voice of who you really are, gets quieter and quieter, until eventually it becomes unfamiliar. This is how forgetting begins. It doesn't happen in a single moment, it happens through 1,000 small compromises. A moment when you silence your intuition to fit in. A day when you pretend to be fine just to appear strong. A year when you chase goals that never belong to you, and slowly, your inner compass stops pointing north. You become lost, but functioning, disconnected, but busy, outwardly successful, inwardly hollow. And here's the great irony. Society calls this growing up. But in truth, it's a form of amnesia, spiritual amnesia. You've forgotten the infinite nature of your being, the vast stillness within you, the wisdom you were born with. You've been taught to look outward for answers that were always meant to be found within. The very design of modern life, fast-paced, image-driven, achievement-obsessed, keeps you too distracted to question, too exhausted to feel, too entertained to awaken. This forgetting is not your fault. It's the result of a system built to keep you asleep, because a person who remembers who they truly are cannot be controlled. They don't fit in neat categories. They don't obey blindly. They don't chase empty success. They live with presence. They radiate authenticity. They see beyond illusion. But the world doesn't reward remembering. It rewards performing. And unless you consciously choose to step off the treadmill, the forgetting continues until one day you no longer recognize yourself in the mirror. Not your face, but your essence. not your body, but your being, not your life, but your light. The term forbidden technique may sound dramatic, even mystical, but the truth is, it's not forbidden by law or hidden in ancient vaults. It's forbidden in the subtle, quiet way that modern culture has made it nearly impossible to access. It's forbidden not by force, but by distraction, not by suppression, but by neglect. The real secret is that the technique has always been available, yet very few ever find it. Why? Because it requires the one thing our society actively avoids: stillness. Inner stillness is the most radical act in a world addicted to noise. We live in an age where motion is glorified. Everyone is in a rush to build, to do, to achieve, to become. Every second of the day is filled with stimulation, messages, notifications, deadlines, scrolling, reacting, talking. Even rest is often just another form of escape from silence, from ourselves. But this technique, this path to remembrance, demands the opposite. It calls you to become still, to stop running, to sit with your breath, to let your thoughts arise without following them, to feel every sensation in your body without judgment, to become so present that you slip through the cracks of time and thought and enter a space where the mind no longer dominates the experience of life. That space is where the soul speaks. Stillness is not just physical. It's mental, emotional, energetic. It's a depth of presence where you are no longer pulled by craving or fear, no longer enslaved by identity or thought. And it's in this stillness that the veil begins to lift, the veil of illusion, of ego, of all the masks you've worn. But why is such stillness forbidden? Because it threatens the very systems that keep the world running. A person who becomes still becomes aware, and awareness is dangerous to those who profit from your unconsciousness. Stillness breaks the spell of consumerism, of performance, of needing more. Stillness leads to self-mastery, and self-mastery cannot be manipulated. That's why every aspect of modern life is designed to pull you out of it. The media wants your attention, corporations want your desires, the internet wants your time, and together they form a kind of invisible cage, one that keeps you moving, striving, wanting, reacting always externally, never inwardly. In such a world, true stillness is an act of defiance. It is also not easy, because once you become still, you're forced to confront what you've been avoiding, your unresolved pain, your buried emotions, your distorted beliefs. The noise of the world has served as a shield from your inner world. Stillness removes that shield. It brings up discomfort before it brings clarity. It invites honesty before it delivers peace. And yet, it is only through this discomfort that transformation begins. Through stillness, you begin to see that you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of them. You are not your emotions, you are the space in which they arise and pass. You are not your identity, you are the awareness that gives it life. This shift in perspective from identification to observation, from chaos to stillness, is the core of the forbidden technique. It doesn't require belief in any dogma. It doesn't require you to join a monastery or abandon your life. It only requires you to pause deeply, consistently, and honestly. And in that pause, in that sacred space between the in-breath and the out-breath, you begin to hear something ancient, something true, something that has always been there beneath the noise. When most people begin a spiritual journey, they ask, "What must I learn to awaken?" But the deeper question, and the more truthful one, is not what to learn, but what to unlearn. Because awakening is not about accumulation. It is not about acquiring more ideas, more knowledge, more practices. It is about subtraction. It is about peeling back what never belonged to you in the first place. It is the courageous act of letting go of beliefs, labels, attachments, and illusions that have covered your soul like layers of dust over a mirror. We were not born with confusion. We were not born with self-hatred, doubt, shame, fear of failure, or the need to be anything other than who we are. Those were given to us, handed down by society, culture, trauma, institutions, and generations of unconsciousness. And we accepted them, slowly, quietly, until we could no longer distinguish our true self from the masks we were taught to wear. Unlearning is the sacred process of dissolving these masks. It begins when you stop asking, "What should I become?" and instead begin asking, "What have I believed that isn't true?" You start to see the programs running in your mind, the ones that tell you you're not good enough unless you're achieving, that you're not lovable unless you fit in, that your worth is tied to your productivity. You begin to question the internalized voices that aren't your own, the voice of the critical parent, the dismissive teacher, the rigid system, the judging society. This work is subtle, yet profound. It's not about fighting these voices. It's about noticing them, observing them, recognizing that they are not you, and in doing so, you create space between your awareness and your conditioning. That space is freedom. Unlearning also means letting go of spiritual ego, the idea that awakening is a destination or a badge of honor. It's not about appearing enlightened. It's not about repeating wise, sounding phrases or adopting a certain look or lifestyle. All of that can become another layer of illusion, another identity to cling to. True unlearning humbles you, it empties you, it takes you back to a raw, honest state where you no longer need to perform your worthiness. At first, unlearning feels like losing certainty, losing stories, losing parts of yourself you thought were essential. But what you're really losing is illusion. What you're shedding is everything you are not. And what emerges beneath it all is not a better version of you. It is the original you, untouched, unchained, and deeply aware. Shi Heng Yi and other masters often teach that wisdom does not come from adding more, it comes from simplifying, removing what clouds the view, refining the lens through which you see. And when you finally stop trying to become something, you begin to remember that you already are everything you need to be. This remembering isn't a mental event. It's not a thought. It's a felt sense, a deep inner knowing that cannot be shaken by circumstance or opinion. It arises only when you've made space for it by unlearning what the world told you to believe about yourself. Awareness is not just a tool, it is the gateway. It is the bridge between the false self and the true self, between the noise of the mind and the silence of the soul. Without awareness, no transformation is possible. Without awareness, life becomes a blur of unconscious habits, automatic reactions, and repeated patterns. But with awareness, even a flicker of it, everything begins to change. At first, awareness may seem simple. It's the ability to observe your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. But in truth, awareness is the foundation of all spiritual realization. It is the inner eye that sees beyond appearances. It is the silent witness that exists beneath the stream of thought. It is what remains when all identities are stripped away, the ever-present observer. Shi Heng Yi speaks of awareness not as a skill to master, but as a state to return to. You don't gain awareness like a possession, you uncover it. It is already there, like a sun behind the clouds of thought, waiting to shine through. But we are rarely taught to value awareness. Instead, we're taught to value action, performance, achievement. We are pushed to do more, be more, achieve more, but rarely told to watch, listen, notice. And yet, awareness is what allows you to break free from the grip of conditioning. When you are unaware, you react from programming. A word triggers you, a fear drives you, a craving pulls you. You live like a puppet animated by forces you do not even see. But when awareness comes online, even for a moment, you step into a position of power. You go from being the actor in the play to being the director behind the scenes. You no longer merely live, you witness your life. This witnessing creates space, and that space is sacred. In that space, between the impulse and the action, between the emotion and the reaction, you find choice, you find clarity, you begin to see the difference between what is happening and how your mind interprets what is happening. You begin to notice the stories you've been telling yourself about your worth, your past, your future, and realize they are just that, stories. But awareness goes even deeper. With consistent presence, awareness begins to illuminate the hidden corners of your being, the subconscious wounds, the unresolved grief, the silent beliefs that have shaped your reality. It is not always comfortable. In fact, awareness often brings discomfort before it brings peace. It reveals the truth, and truth can sting before it sets you free. But it is in this raw honesty that true healing begins. Unlike knowledge, awareness is not intellectual. You can read thousands of books and still be asleep. You can memorize every spiritual teaching and still act unconsciously. Awareness is experiential. It is alive. It must be practiced, moment by moment, breath by breath. It must be cultivated like a fire, gently, patiently, consistently, and it is through this cultivation that the soul begins to stir, because awareness is the language of the soul. It doesn't speak in words, but in presence. It doesn't shout, but it knows. The more aware you become, the more your essence begins to reveal itself, not in dramatic flashes, but in quiet recognitions. You start remembering what you've always known but forgotten, that you are not separate from life, that you are not broken, that you are consciousness itself, awake, aware, alive. In the ancient wisdom of the Shaolin tradition, and in nearly all authentic spiritual paths, there is a sacred recognition. Transformation is not merely a mental experience. Real awakening, real remembering is embodied. It is not enough to sit in thought or recite spiritual ideas. The journey of remembering who you truly are requires a complete and conscious alignment of your body, your breath, and your mind. These three, body, breath, and mind, are not separate entities. They are deeply interwoven. When one is disturbed, the others follow. When one is balanced, the others can return to harmony. But in modern life, these three elements are almost always in conflict. The mind races, the breath shortens, the body tenses. You move through your day disconnected from your physical sensations, unaware of your breathing patterns, and over-identified with your mental noise. This disconnection creates a fragmented self, one that feels restless, anxious, and hollow. Shi Heng Yi emphasizes this truth with clarity. The path back to the soul must involve the whole being. You cannot reach spiritual depth by bypassing the body. You cannot find peace if your breath is erratic. You cannot access true clarity if your mind is scattered. Alignment is the foundation, and it begins with awareness, followed by conscious integration. Let's begin with the body. The body holds your story. Every trauma, every emotion not fully felt, every suppressed instinct, it lives in the tissues, muscles, and posture. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. When the body is stiff, tight, or overstimulated, it becomes difficult to access stillness or inner knowing. But when you bring attention to the body through mindful movement, still sitting, or practices like Qigong, you begin to unwind the layers of tension that have buried your presence. Next comes the breath, the bridge between body and mind. Breath is sacred. It is both unconscious and controllable, both physical and energetic. Most people live with shallow breath, breathing only into the chest, unaware, rushed. Shallow breathing activates the stress response, reinforcing anxiety and disconnection. But when you bring awareness to your breath, lengthening it, deepening it, grounding it, you send signals of safety to the nervous system. You anchor yourself in the present. In many traditions, the breath is not just air, it is life force, prana, kai. To breathe consciously is to reconnect with the energy of existence itself, and then we arrive at the mind, the most powerful and often the most unruly part of the triad. The mind, when untrained, is like a wild horse jumping from past to future, creating stories, judgments, fears. Most people are at the mercy of their thoughts, believing every narrative their mind constructs. But through practice, especially when body and breath are steady, the mind begins to quiet. It begins to listen rather than control. It shifts from constant thinking to spacious awareness. When body, breath, and mind come into alignment, something remarkable happens. You enter a state of coherence. Your entire being becomes synchronized. You are no longer split between what you feel, what you think, and what you do. You become present not as a concept, but as a living experience. This state is where transformation becomes possible. It is where the soul becomes audible. It is where remembrance begins. Alignment is not a one-time event. It is a daily, even moment-to-moment practice. It requires discipline, yes, but more than that, it requires sincerity. The willingness to slow down, the willingness to be honest, the willingness to feel. Whether through still sitting, walking meditation, martial arts, breathwork, or even simple daily pauses, you begin to rewire your internal system to operate as one unified whole instead of a collection of disconnected parts. And in this unification, you return to your natural state, not stressed, not fractured, but whole. The path of remembering who you truly are is not a popular road. It is not paved with applause, nor is it lined with companions cheering you on. In fact, it often begins with a deep sense of solitude, not loneliness, but aloneness. This solitude is not a punishment. It is a necessary space, a sacred container where transformation is allowed to unfold without distortion from the external world. Because the journey inward, the one that leads to the soul, is intensely personal, no one can walk it for you. No one can truly understand what it reveals to you, and no one else can take responsibility for your awakening. We live in a culture that is afraid of being alone. We're trained to be constantly surrounded by people, entertainment, noise, validation. Solitude is treated like a void to be avoided, rather than a doorway to be entered. But the truth is, solitude is where your inner voice becomes loud enough to hear. It's where the distractions fade and your intuition begins to rise. It's where the masks fall and the real questions, the uncomfortable, soul-stirring questions start to emerge. Who am I when no one is looking? What have I been running from? What is truly mine, and what was given to me by others? To sit in solitude, to face yourself without flinching, this requires courage. And not the dramatic, outward kind of courage that the world praises. Not the kind used to conquer, compete, or display strength. This courage is quieter, deeper, more piercing. It's the courage to feel what you've suppressed, to grieve what you never allowed yourself to mourn, to admit the truths you've long denied. It's the courage to dismantle the identity you've carefully constructed, even if it means letting go of everything familiar. Most people avoid this part of the journey. They seek enlightenment through shortcuts, new beliefs, new practices, even spiritual communities that become just another form of distraction. But the real work, it begins when the noise ends, when there's no one left to impress. When you're no longer performing, when you're sitting in the raw presence of your being, stripped of titles, roles, and ego, and you begin to meet yourself without filters. This path is not for the faint-hearted, not because it is harsh, but because it is real. It demands that you face the parts of yourself you've hidden, the anger, the fear, the doubt, the shadow. It calls you to hold them in compassion, not run from them. It asks you to step into the fire of awareness, knowing that the false will burn, but the truth will remain. And it is that truth that liberates you. Shi Heng Yi and many other masters often point to the discipline of stillness, the discipline of introspection, as the highest form of martial art. Because facing others may win battles, but facing yourself wins freedom. In solitude, you do not seek to conquer anything outside. You seek to harmonize what is within. You learn to sit in silence not because it is easy, but because it is essential. You understand that real strength is measured not by your ability to resist life's storms, but by your willingness to remain present in the middle of them. The solitude reveals the path, but the courage is what keeps you walking it. It's what pushes you forward when there is no map, when doubt creeps in, when old habits call you back into the comfort of unconsciousness. Courage says, feel it anyway, see it through, stay awake. Every step you take in that direction, no matter how small, becomes an act of devotion to your own soul. And while this path may begin in solitude and demand immense courage, it also offers something rare and sacred in return, the unshakable realization that you are never truly alone. This truth is at once the most liberating and the most difficult to grasp. You are already what you seek. The peace you long for, the clarity you chase, the love you try to earn, the worth you're striving to prove, it's all within you. It has always been within you, but because you've been conditioned to look outward, you've forgotten how to access it. Modern life has created an illusion that fulfillment lies in acquisition of knowledge, of success, of spiritual achievements. You are told that if you do more, become more, change more, then you will be complete. But the paradox is this: the more you seek yourself outside, the further away you feel from your own essence. This inner misalignment begins early. As children, we are deeply present. We cry when we're hurt, laugh without shame, and rest without guilt. We are in touch with our essence, but as we grow, that essence is slowly covered by expectations, by cultural programming, by trauma, by the need to fit in. And so we start to build a self not from authenticity, but from adaptation. A self that performs to be loved, a self that conforms to survive, a self that forgets how to simply be. Spiritual teachings across traditions, from Shaolin wisdom to non-dualism to mystical Christianity, all echo the same message: the truth is within you. But understanding that intellectually and realizing it are two very different things. You can repeat the words "I am enough," yet still live in fear. You can read 1,000 books and still feel incomplete. Because remembrance is not mental, it is experiential. To remember that you are already what you seek is to stop searching and start sensing. It is to slow down and feel not the surface emotions that come and go, but the deep, quiet presence underneath. It is to sit in stillness, not to gain something, but to return to what never left. It is to realize that you are not broken, just buried, not lost, but layered, not absent, but asleep. When you begin to drop the illusions, the stories of unworthiness, the chasing of external validation, the belief that enlightenment is somewhere far away, you start to see clearly. And what you see is that the light you were praying for, the love you were begging for, the freedom you were fighting for, it was never outside of you, it was you, it was always you. But the ego resists this truth because it thrives on seeking. The mind wants complexity. It wants to fix, to improve, to become. It believes that your worth must be earned, that peace must be achieved, that the divine must be found in some far-off place. But the soul knows otherwise. The soul whispers in moments of quiet, "Stop running, be still, you are already home." This truth, while simple, is revolutionary, because once you realize you are already what you seek, the game changes. You are no longer operating from lack, but from wholeness. You are no longer climbing a ladder, but discovering the ground beneath your feet. You stop trying to become and begin to remember, and remembrance is not passive. It is the most powerful act of self-liberation. It is the quiet, consistent return to your own presence, again and again, until the illusion of separation fades. You don't need to be more. You need to see more clearly. See through the false self, the projections, the noise, and what remains, what's left when all else falls away, is not emptiness. It's the most profound fullness you've ever known. So now, standing at the edge of all you've unlearned, remembered, and realigned, there is only one step left, the return. Not a return to who the world told you to be, but a return to who you were before the world told you anything at all. A return to the silence that has always held you, to the breath that never left you, to the awareness that watched patiently as you forgot, and waited as you found your way back. This path is not about reaching for something outside. It's about uncovering what was hidden beneath the noise, the fear, the striving. You are not becoming your highest self. You are remembering that you've always been it. The forbidden technique isn't a secret to be decoded. It is a choice to be made. A choice to sit in stillness when the world shouts. A choice to feel when numbness is easier. A choice to listen when your soul whispers, "I've been here all along." And once you make that choice, not once, but every day, you will no longer chase what you seek. Because you will have become the stillness, you will have remembered the truth, you will have returned to who you truly are.